Lily lived a life that looked simple on the outside, but inside her heart burned with 1,000 unspoken dreams. She worked quietly during the day, books stacked neatly on her desk, her hands moving gracefully as she helped others. People in her village often saw her as gentle, soft-spoken, and a little mysterious. But when night came, Lily's thoughts turned restless. She would sit by her window, gazing at the silver glow of the moon, wondering if love could ever be hers. Not just any love, but the kind that would make her feel safe, cherished, and truly seen. She often pressed her palm against her chest, whispering to herself, "Is it too much to ask, to be loved for who I am, not for what I can give?" Though she smiled during the day, her heart carried a quiet longing, an ache for someone who would look beyond her surface, someone who would guard her heart rather than cage it. It was in this vulnerable season of waiting that two men's shadows began to circle her life, one blazing like fire, the other steady like the moon. And Lily, though she didn't know it yet, was standing at the edge of a story that would tear her heart in two. The marketplace buzzed with voices that morning, merchants calling out their wares, children weaving through the crowd with laughter. Lily moved carefully between the stalls, her basket half filled with fruit, her thoughts still lost in last night's silent prayers for love. Then the air shifted. It was subtle at first, the way conversations hushed, how people instinctively made way, their eyes lowering as though in respect, or fear. That's when she saw him. Alpha Kale. He moved through the crowd like a storm wrapped in human form. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark coat sweeping behind him as though even the wind obeyed his steps. His presence was magnetic, commanding every gaze, yet it carried a weight that made the air heavier with each breath. Lily froze, her heart quickening. She had heard stories of him, how his strength was unmatched, how his words could bend men to his will. But she had never expected him to be this. His eyes, sharp and predatory, scanned the crowd until they landed on her. And in that moment, Lily felt exposed. Kale's lips curved into something between a smirk and a smile, the kind that said he always got what he wanted. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her as he spoke in a low, rich tone. "Tell me," he said, his gaze unblinking. "What's your name?" The world seemed to still around her. Lily swallowed, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Lily." Kale's smile deepened, though there was something unsettling in it. Charming, yes, but edged with danger. "Lily," he repeated slowly, as if savoring the sound. "Beautiful, fitting for a flower that doesn't yet know how much sunlight it deserves." Her cheeks warmed, though not entirely from flattery. There was power in his words, a pull she couldn't deny. Yet beneath it, she sensed something darker, something that made her instinctively take a half step back. Kyle noticed. His eyes narrowed slightly, but his smirk remained. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. "Don't hide from me, little flower. I always find what belongs to me." A shiver ran through Lily, not of delight, but of warning. For the first time in her life, she felt both wanted and trapped. For the rest of that morning, Lily couldn't escape the weight of Alpha Kale's presence. Even after he moved on through the marketplace, she still felt the echo of his gaze, as though invisible threads tied her to him. Her basket trembled slightly in her hands, but her heart trembled even more. He noticed me. He actually noticed me, she thought, cheeks warming. For a fleeting moment, she felt like the heroine of those love stories she often read in borrowed books, seen, chosen, desired by a powerful man. And yet, under that warmth, a chill lingered. There had been something in his eyes, not just charm, but possession. His words had been sweet on the surface, but underneath, they carried a command. "I always find what belongs to me." Belongs. The word rattled in her chest like a chain. That night, Lily lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her fingers brushing her lips as if the memory of his smirk still hovered there. Her heart raced each time she replayed his voice in her mind. A part of her, the part that longed for romance, whispered that perhaps this was fate. Perhaps love had finally come. But another part, the quieter, wiser part, urged her to be careful, because there was a difference between being cherished and being claimed. And though Kale's attention made her feel beautiful, it also made her feel small, like a fragile bird caught in the talons of something much stronger. Lily closed her eyes, torn between excitement and unease, unaware that her life had just stepped onto a dangerous path. And in the shadows, far beyond her window, another pair of eyes, gentle, watchful, and protective, had seen the same moment. Sam, the Omega, had noticed her too. But unlike the Alpha, his gaze held no chains, only quiet strength. In the days that followed, Kale's presence became inescapable. Wherever Lily went, he seemed to appear, sometimes in the marketplace, sometimes along the quiet path that led to her home. At first, his gestures carried the elegance of a suitor, a single red rose left on her doorstep, a silver bracelet wrapped in velvet delivered by his guards, his voice lowered to honey when he spoke her name. "Every flower pales beside you, Lily," he would murmur, his gaze holding hers until her cheeks burned. And though the villagers whispered of her luck, Lily's heart fluttered with confusion. Yes, it was flattering to be the focus of such a powerful man's attention. His charm was undeniable. His words made her feel radiant, desired, even special. But beneath the gifts, beneath the soft smiles, there was always an edge. When she hesitated to accept the bracelet, Kale's eyes darkened. "Do not refuse me," he said softly, though his tone held the weight of command. "When I give, it is because you are worthy. You will wear it." Lily obeyed, her hands trembling as she slipped the cold metal onto her wrist. The villagers clapped and whispered blessings, but Lily felt as though invisible chains had tightened around her skin. At gatherings, Kale stood close, too close, his hand heavy on her shoulder, his voice deep in her ear, as he reminded others that she was his. His presence overshadowed hers, his charm like fire, warm at first, but dangerously consuming the longer she stayed near. One evening, as she returned home, she found Kale already waiting at her gate. His smirk widened when her steps faltered. "I told you, little flower," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I always find what belongs to me." Her heart thudded painfully in her chest, flattered, yet trapped, desired, yet afraid. And somewhere, hidden in the crowd of shadows, a quieter figure watched. Sam, the Omega, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with the kind of care Kyle could never understand. At first, Kale's attentions made Lily feel like she was living in a dream. The bracelets, the flowers, the way people stared at her with envy whenever he stood at her side, it all made her feel desired, almost important. But dreams can sour. It began with small things. When Lily lingered too long at the market stalls, chatting with the vendors, Kale's hand would find her arm, firm and unyielding. "You've talked enough," he would say with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. When she laughed with the other women in the square, Kale's gaze would flick to her with quiet disapproval. "A lady doesn't laugh so loudly," he murmured, brushing his thumb across her cheek in a gesture that seemed tender to outsiders. But to Lily, it felt like a warning. The bracelet he had given her, once beautiful, began to feel like a shackle. Each time she thought of removing it, Kale's voice echoed in her mind. "You will wear it." One evening, after Lily helped a young boy pick up the apples he had dropped in the street, she felt Kale's presence behind her. His smile was sharp as glass. "You are too kind," he said softly, almost tenderly, before his tone dropped lower. "But you don't kneel for anyone but me." Lily's breath caught. His hand slid around her waist, firm and possessive, as though staking a claim before the entire world. Her heart raced, not from romance, but from the growing realization that Cale's love was not love at all. It was control. A cage wrapped in velvet, a fire that promised to burn her if she strayed too far. That night, Lily sat by her window again, staring at the moon. She pressed her fingers against the bracelet until it bit into her skin. For the first time, her secret prayers shifted from longing for love to longing for escape. And though she didn't know it yet, someone had seen her silent plea. From the shadows, Sam, the Omega, watched her sorrow with quiet anguish. He had no power like the Alpha, no riches or armies. But in his eyes, there was something Cale could never offer, gentle strength, a promise to protect, even if it cost him everything. It was a late afternoon when Lily first noticed him, not in the way she noticed Cale, with fire and shadows, but in a way that slipped quietly into her heart. She was walking home from the marketplace, her basket heavy in her arms, when one of the handles snapped. Apples scattered across the dirt road, rolling into the dust. Lily bent quickly to gather them, her face warm with embarrassment as villagers passed by without stopping. But then, a pair of strong, gentle hands appeared beside hers. She looked up, and her breath caught. The man was tall, but not imposing. His presence didn't press down on her the way Cale's did. Instead, it felt calming, like standing near a quiet stream. His dark hair fell slightly into his eyes as he handed her an apple, his touch steady, unhurried. "Here," he said softly, his voice low but kind. Their eyes met for the first time. Unlike Cale's sharp, commanding gaze, his eyes held warmth, like sunlight through leaves, soft and steady. They searched her face not to claim, but to understand. "Thank you," Lily whispered, almost shy. He nodded once, a small, almost bashful smile brushing his lips, then helped her gather the rest of the apples without another word. When the last one was placed gently in her basket, he rose, gave her a respectful bow of his head, and turned to leave. "Wait." The word slipped out before she could stop it. I didn't catch your name." He paused. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, in that same calm, steady tone, he said, "Sam." And then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd with the quiet grace of someone used to being unseen. But Lily felt something stir inside her chest, something she hadn't felt even once in Cale's presence. Safety. What she didn't know was that Sam had seen her many times before, watched from the edges, unseen yet ever watchful. Not because he wanted to claim her, but because he couldn't help but protect her. He was the Omega, the one who stood in the shadows, overlooked and underestimated. And though he said little, his silence carried more truth than all of Cale's beautiful lies. The next time Lily saw Sam, it was not by accident. She had gone to the well just outside the village, her shawl drawn close around her shoulders. The morning air was cool, the mist curling low against the earth. As she lowered her pail into the water, she noticed him again, Sam, standing a little apart, carrying a bundle of firewood. Their eyes met briefly. He nodded politely, about to pass by, but something stirred in Lily's chest, an impulse she didn't fully understand. "Wait," she called softly. Sam paused. His dark eyes rested on her, questioning, guarded but not unkind. "You're carrying too much," Lily said, stepping closer. "Here, let me help." Before he could protest, she reached for part of the bundle. It was heavier than she expected, and her arms trembled, but she lifted it anyway. Sam blinked, surprise flickering across his usually composed face. "No one usually offers," he murmured, his voice quiet as though unused to being heard. Lily smiled gently, brushing dust from her palms. "Then they should. Kindness isn't a gift, it's a duty. At least, that's what I believe." For the first time, Sam's expression softened into something more than politeness. A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips, faint but real, like sunlight breaking through clouds. They walked together for a short while, carrying the firewood side by side. There was no grand conversation, no dramatic declarations, just silence, broken only by the sound of their footsteps. Yet the silence wasn't heavy, it was peaceful. And in that quiet, Lily felt warmth spread through her chest, steady and gentle, unlike the dizzying fire Cale always left behind. When they reached Sam's humble dwelling at the edge of the village, he took the wood from her arms and bowed his head. "Thank you, Lily." Her name and his voice sounded different. No command, no claim, only gratitude. Lily found herself smiling as she walked away, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. What she didn't see was the way Sam watched her retreating figure, his hand unconsciously tightening around the firewood. In his eyes, there was a promise he dared not speak aloud. If Cale ever hurt her, he would be there. It was the evening of the midsummer gathering, when the villagers lit lanterns and filled the square with music and laughter. Children ran between stalls, the air smelled of roasted corn, and for once, Lily allowed herself to enjoy the brightness of it all. She was speaking with two of the village women, laughing softly at their stories, when the atmosphere shifted, just as it always did when Cale entered. The crowd stilled, heads lowered. A path opened through the people as the Alpha strode forward, his dark cloak sweeping behind him, his presence heavy and commanding. Lily's heart dropped. Cale's sharp gaze found her instantly. His lips curved into a triumphant smirk as he walked straight toward her, ignoring every bowed head around him. Without asking, without hesitation, he slipped an arm around her waist, pulling her against his side. "My flower," he said loudly enough for all to hear, his voice dripping with possessive pride. "Do you see? Even in a crowd you shine brighter than the lanterns." The villagers murmured, some smiling with envy, others with fear. To them, it must have looked like a fairy tale, an Alpha declaring his affection. But to Lily, it felt like a chain tightening around her ribs. She tried to smile, tried to keep her composure, but her breath came shallow. His grip was too firm, his hand heavy on her waist. Every time she shifted, he pulled her closer, as though daring anyone to forget she belonged to him. When one of the women she had been speaking with gave her a sympathetic glance, Cale's eyes narrowed. He bent close to Lily's ear, his words meant only for her. "Don't look at them," he whispered, voice low and sharp. "Your eyes are mine." Lily stiffened, her smile faltering. The warmth she had felt earlier with Sam vanished, replaced by a suffocating weight. For the rest of the night, Cale paraded her through the square like a prized possession, his hand never leaving her. Each compliment, each touch, was less about affection and more about a declaration of ownership. And Lily, trapped in the gaze of her people and the grip of the Alpha, felt smaller than ever. But at the edge of the crowd, hidden by shadows, a pair of watchful eyes never left her. Sam's. He saw the fear behind her smile. He saw the way her body tensed under Cale's touch. And in that moment, his quiet resolve hardened. If Cale thought Lily was his to cage, he would learn what it meant for someone to stand between a flower and the fire. From the shadows of the midsummer square, Sam stood still, unseen by most. His presence was quiet, his figure blending into the edges where laughter and music softened into silence. But his eyes never left Lily. He watched as Cale paraded her through the crowd, his arm coiled possessively around her waist. To the villagers, it looked like devotion, power, a fairy tale unfolding before their eyes. But Sam saw past the surface. He saw the slight tremor in Lily's hands when Cale pressed a bracelet tighter around her wrist. He saw the way her smile faltered whenever Cale leaned too close. He saw the tension in her shoulders, the same way a bird shivers when it knows it's caught in a cage. Sam's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists at his sides, though he forced himself to remain still. He was an Omega. He knew his place. The Alpha's claim was law, his strength unquestioned. And yet, Sam's heart rebelled. Each time Cale bent his head to whisper something in Lily's ear, Sam imagined stepping forward, pulling her away, shielding her with his body. But he didn't move. Not yet. To challenge Cale openly would be suicide, and worse, it might put Lily in more danger. So he remained in the shadows, his gaze steady, his chest burning with unspoken resolve. For years, Sam had lived quietly, overlooked by most, his strength hidden in silence. But tonight, watching Lily's spirit flicker beneath Cale's control, something inside him shifted. His protective instincts, always restrained, surged stronger than ever before. He whispered her name under his breath, soft, reverent, a promise only the night could hear. Lily. And in his heart, he swore, if the Alpha's fire threatened to consume her, then I will be the shield. Even if it costs me everything. From across the square, Lily's eyes briefly lifted, almost as if she sensed him. Their gazes touched for the faintest moment. She didn't smile, but in her weary expression, Sam saw it, the silent plea she could never speak aloud. And that was enough. Sam's quiet vow rooted deeper. The day would come when he would no longer stay in the shadows. That night, long after the lanterns of the midsummer gathering had gone out, Lily sat alone in her room. The bracelet Cale had forced upon her glimmered faintly in the moonlight, its silver links cool against her skin. She traced it with trembling fingers, her heart heavy. During the day, Cale's attention made her feel chosen. His words dripped with charm, and the villagers looked at her with admiration, whispering that she was lucky, that any woman would give anything to be noticed by the Alpha. But when the night grew quiet, the admiration faded, and the truth settled in her chest like a stone. It wasn't love she felt when Cale's arms wrapped around her. It was weight, possession, the feeling of a bird being held too tightly in a fist. Lily closed her eyes, remembering Sam's steady gaze from across the square. Just for a moment, their eyes had met, and she had seen something in him Cale never gave her. Gentleness. Not a fire that consumed, but a warmth that soothed. Her heart ached. She wanted freedom. She wanted to laugh without being told it was too loud, to speak without fear of disapproval, to choose kindness without someone turning it into weakness. She longed to be seen, not claimed. But then Cale's voice echoed in her memory, low, commanding, unshakable. I always find what belongs to me. Fear clenched around her ribs like iron. If she defied him, what would happen? To her? To Sam, who had already caught Cale's suspicion? Lily pressed her forehead against the window pane, tears stinging her eyes. Her heart pulled in two directions, toward the quiet safety of freedom and the tender possibility of love, and toward the crushing weight of Cale's dominance. A whisper escaped her lips, fragile as the night breeze. God help me, which path do I take? For the first time, Lily realized that her story would not be simple. Love would not come without cost, and her choices, though small now, would decide whether her heart bloomed or broke forever. In the days after the midsummer gathering, Kyle's pursuit of Lily only grew bolder. Gifts arrived at her door each morning, silk gowns folded neatly in carved chests, baskets of rare fruits from distant lands, necklaces heavy with jewels. The villagers whispered with envy, pointing at her as she passed, their smiles laced with awe. Look at her, they murmured. The Alpha must truly love her. But love was not what Lily felt. The gowns were beautiful, yes, but they came with conditions. Wear the red one tonight, Cale had commanded, his tone soft but edged with iron. And when Lily timidly suggested she preferred the blue, His smile thinned. I said red, Lily. I want the world to see you burn as brightly as I do. The necklace glittered in the sunlight, but when Lily hesitated to fasten it around her throat, Kyle leaned close, his voice dangerously calm. Do not dishonor me by refusing what I give. Even the fruits, sweet on her tongue, left a bitter aftertaste, because Kyle always asked afterward, Did you enjoy it? Then you owe me your smile. Each gift was a chain, silken and gilded, binding her tighter to him. At first, she tried to resist gently, suggesting she didn't need such luxuries, that her happiness wasn't measured in gold. But Kyle's gaze would harden, and he would tilt her chin up with fingers that felt more like a command than a caress. Don't speak such nonsense, he would murmur. Everything I give is for your good. I know what you need better than you do. The villagers continued to admire her, blind to the truth. They saw her draped in silks and jewels, but they did not see the invisible cage forming around her. And Lily, though she smiled when others watched, felt herself shrinking inside. Each choice was no longer her own. What she wore, how she spoke, when she laughed, all dictated by Kale's will. Her heart whispered for freedom, but her lips stayed silent. Because the Alpha's love was not a gift she could return. It was a chain she was too afraid to break. It happened on a rain-soaked afternoon. Lily had been walking through the crowded market, wearing the crimson gown Kale demanded of her. Its heavy fabric clung uncomfortably to her as the storm clouds opened above. The streets turned to mud, and the villagers scattered, rushing for shelter. Her sandals slipped, her basket tumbled, and fresh bread rolled into the dirt. Lily bent to retrieve it, her hands trembling, not from the storm, but from the shame curling in her stomach. She could almost hear Kale's mocking tone. Clumsy little flower, you should be more careful. Her throat tightened, tears threatened. Then, a hand appeared, steady, quiet, picking up the bread and brushing off the mud as best it could. Lily looked up, startled, into the calm, storm-gray eyes of Sam. He didn't speak at first. He only offered her the salvaged loaf, his expression unreadable, yet strangely soft. His hair dripped with rain, his clothes plain, and unlike Kale, he did not tower over her. He simply stood beside her. You shouldn't carry all this alone, he said finally, his voice low, almost hesitant. Let me help. Before she could protest, Sam gathered the heavier items from her basket, balancing them with ease. There was no command in his tone, no expectation in his gesture, only quiet assistance. Lily's heart stuttered. No one had ever helped her without asking for something in return. Not Kale, not even the villagers who admired her new status. As they walked, rain dripping from the eaves around them, Sam's silence spoke louder than Kale's constant declarations. He didn't ask why her eyes looked distant, or why her hands trembled. He didn't pry. Instead, he walked close enough for her to feel safe, far enough not to crowd her. When they reached her gate, Sam set the basket down carefully. For a moment, their eyes met, and Lily felt the warmth of something she had nearly forgotten. Kindness without conditions. Thank you, she whispered, her voice cracking. Sam gave the faintest nod. His lips parted, as if he wanted to say more, but he stopped himself. Instead, he turned away, vanishing into the rain as quietly as he had come. Lily stood frozen at her doorstep, her basket full again, but her heart even fuller. For the first time, she realized how desperately she longed for a love that did not bind her, but freed her. The days passed, and Lily could not forget the rain-soaked afternoon when Sam had quietly carried her burden. It was such a small act, yet it lingered in her heart like a soft echo. Every time Kale's gifts glittered before her eyes, she remembered the way Sam had brushed the mud from her bread with gentle care, treating it, and her, as though both were worth saving. Kale's love was loud, consuming. He claimed her in the square, his arm heavy across her shoulders as he declared, "This is mine." His voice boomed, demanding admiration from those around them. His presence filled every space like fire, dazzling, dangerous, impossible to escape. Sam, in contrast, was silence. He did not seek eyes or ears. His strength was not measured by the weight of his words, but by the steadiness of his presence. A glance, a nod, the way he moved closer when shadows deepened, as if he were always watching, always ready, but never demanding. Lily began to see it clearly. One man burned to control her, the other steadied her to stand. It frightened her, because when Cale's hand tightened around hers, pulling her into his world of wealth and power, her body obeyed. But when Sam's eyes met hers across a crowded street, she felt her soul respond. One night, Kyle presented her with a necklace studded with rubies. The villagers gasped, marveling at its worth. Kale leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. "Wear this, and everyone will know you belong to me." Her heart stilled. Belong to me. Later, when Kale left, she removed the necklace and hid it in a drawer. And for the first time she wondered, what would it feel like to belong to no one but myself? And then, unbidden, another thought. What would it feel like to be with someone who didn't want to own me, but protect me? Her pulse quickened. Sam's face came to mind, his quiet strength, his steady gaze. The realization struck her like lightning. She was beginning to compare them, and in that comparison, Kale's fire seemed less like passion, and more like a prison. It began with a glance. Kale noticed it, how Lily's eyes drifted across the square, how her breath seemed to pause when Sam passed by, quiet as ever, carrying bundles for the elder villagers. It was subtle, fleeting, but Kale missed nothing. That evening, when the torches were lit and the feasting hall buzzed with laughter, Kale drew Lily aside. His hand clamped around her wrist, the jeweled bracelet digging into her skin. "You've been distracted," he said softly, though his tone carried steel. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, searched her face. Lily tried to smile. I've just been tired, that's all." Kale leaned closer, so near she could feel the heat of his breath. "Don't lie to me, Lily. I know where your eyes wander." Her heart lurched. Fear coiled in her stomach. Kale's grip tightened. "That Omega," he spat, as if the word were filth. "Sam, you will not look at him. You will not speak to him. Do you understand?" Lily swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "He's done nothing wrong." Kale's lips curved, but it was not a smile. It was the sharp edge of a blade. "Wrong? He dares to exist where I don't want him. That is enough." His thumb brushed her cheek, mockingly tender. "You are mine, Lily, and I don't share what's mine." Her chest ached. His touch felt like fire, burning not with warmth but with warning. I understand," she stammered, though every word tasted like ashes. Kyle released her, smoothing her hair as though he hadn't just threatened the air she breathed. His voice dropped lower, silk wrapping steel. "Good girl. Remember, I give you everything. Don't make me take it away." He kissed her forehead before returning to the feast, his laughter booming, his dominance unchallenged. But Lily stood frozen, her wrist throbbing where his fingers had pressed. Across the hall, her gaze found Sam for just a heartbeat. He was watching, not boldly, but quietly, his expression unreadable, yet full of something Kale could never mimic. And for the first time, Lily realized, Kale wasn't just fighting for her love. He was fighting to cage her spirit. And Sam might be the only one who could set her free. For weeks, Kale had told Lily a story, that her family's small plot of land, the garden her late mother had tended, was safe under his protection. He had assured her again and again, "No one will touch what belongs to you. My word is law." It was one of the few promises she clung to, the one place that still felt like hers. But one morning, Lily walked the path to the garden, only to find strangers there. Men in Kale's colors, uprooting the wildflowers and tearing down the wooden fence. Her breath caught. "Stop!" she cried, running forward. "What are you doing?" One of the men straightened, looking uncomfortable. "Orders from the Alpha. This land is to be cleared." Her heart cracked. "No," she whispered. "That can't be right. He told me. He promised." The man only shrugged, returning to his work. Tears stung her eyes as she stumbled back toward Kale's estate, rage and confusion boiling within her. When she finally found him, he was lounging in the courtyard, a goblet of wine in his hand, laughing with his advisors. "Kale," she gasped, trembling. "Why are your men tearing down my garden?" The laughter stilled. Kale turned, his smile slow and infuriatingly calm. "Ah, you saw." Her chest constricted. "You told me it was safe. You promised." He rose, walking toward her with deliberate grace. "Lily, that land was wasted. Wildflowers? We need crops, storage, a place to expand. I did it for your good, for our good." Her hands shook. "For my good?" Her voice cracked. "That garden was my mother's. It was the only piece of her I had left." Kyle's smile faltered, irritation flashing in his eyes. "Do not raise your voice at me. You're blinded by sentiment. You'll see in time that I was right." The betrayal cut deeper than any blade. It wasn't just the land, it was the lie. The ease with which he had broken his word, the cold dismissal of her pain. Lily stepped back, her tears falling freely now. For the first time, she didn't just feel trapped. She felt cheated. She had given Kale the fragile thread of her trust, and he had severed it without hesitation. In the shadows of the courtyard, she caught sight of Sam, watching quietly as always. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, and though he said nothing, the truth in his gaze was clear. "You deserve better." That night, Lily wandered back to the garden path, now ruined and stripped bare. The moonlight fell over the broken fence posts, the uprooted earth, the memory of her mother's flowers trampled into mud. She sank to her knees, pressing her palms against the soil as if she could will life back into it. Her tears fell freely, silent sobs racking her chest. For the first time, she felt truly alone. Her voice, her wishes, her grief. None of it had mattered to Kale. Lily. She startled at the sound, turning to find Sam standing at the edge of the path. He didn't approach right away. He waited, giving her space, as though he understood that her sorrow needed room to breathe. When she didn't push him away, he stepped closer, slow and steady, until he stood beside her. For a long moment, he said nothing. He didn't try to explain away her pain, didn't offer false promises or polished words. He simply lowered himself to the ground, sitting in the mud beside her, their shoulders brushing faintly. The silence between them wasn't heavy. It was gentle, like a blanket placed over trembling hands. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I know what it feels like, to lose something no one else sees the value of." Lily's breath hitched. She looked at him, surprised by the rawness in his eyes. For once, he wasn't the unreadable Omega. He was human, vulnerable, carrying scars of his own. Her throat tightened. Words refused to come, but Sam didn't need them. Instead, he reached out, not to pull her, not to claim her, but simply to place his hand over hers, steady and warm against the cold earth. The touch was light, almost hesitant, yet it anchored her. Her sobs softened, her breathing slowed, and in that quiet, Lily felt something she hadn't known she craved. Safety. Her heart fluttered wildly, not with fear, but with a dangerous, fragile ache of longing. Longing for more of this. More of him. She pulled her hand back only when the weight of the moment threatened to break her resolve. But as she rose to her feet, she knew something had shifted. Kale's fire consumed. Sam's presence healed. And Lily was beginning to realize which one her heart truly needed. Sleep did not come easily anymore. Lily tossed and turned beneath her sheets, her mind a storm of thoughts. She closed her eyes and imagined herself walking barefoot through the woods, free of Kyle's gifts, free of his heavy hand on her shoulder. She imagined laughter that wasn't forced, days that weren't dictated, nights where she could choose whose company she kept. She imagined leaving it all behind, the silks, the jewels, the suffocating promises. She imagined stepping onto a road with nothing but herself. And maybe, just maybe, a pair of quiet gray eyes beside her. The thought of Sam filled her chest with both warmth and dread. Warmth, because his presence had become her only light in this darkness. Dread, because Kale's warning still rang in her ears. You are mine, and I don't share what's mine. Lily sat up, clutching the blanket to her chest. What would Kale do if he even suspected she wanted freedom? She had seen his temper flare before, a shattered goblet against a wall, a guard struck down for the smallest mistake. If that rage ever turned fully on her, her hands trembled, and worse, if she tried to run, Kale would not only hunt her, he would hunt anyone who helped her. That meant Sam. The thought of Kale's fury directed at him sent a cold shiver down her spine. So she stayed. Every morning she smiled when Kyle demanded it. Every evening she wore the gowns he chose. Outwardly, she played the obedient flower. But inside, her roots twisted painfully, longing to break free of the soil that bound her. In the quiet hours, when the moonlight filtered through her window, Lily whispered her secret prayers into the night. Please, let there be a way out. Her dreams of escape grew stronger each day, but so did her fear, because freedom meant defying Kale, and defying Kale meant stepping into fire. Kale had always prided himself on control, of his pack, of his enemies, of Lily. But lately, he had begun to notice cracks. She smiled less when he spoke. Her laughter came hesitantly, like a bird too frightened to sing. And worst of all, her eyes had a way of drifting, not toward riches or finery, but toward a figure Kale loathed to acknowledge. Sam. The quiet Omega was always nearby. Too nearby. Helping elders, carrying supplies, speaking little but watching everything. Kale had dismissed him once as unthreatening, beneath notice. But now he noticed, and he didn't like what he saw. One evening, after a village gathering, Kale pulled Lily aside. His grip on her arm was deceptively gentle, his smile as polished as ever, though his eyes burned. You've seemed distracted, he said, voice low. Tell me, Lily, what is it that keeps stealing your thoughts? Her heart stuttered. She forced a laugh, shaking her head. Nothing, Kale. I've just been tired. Tired? His thumb brushed her wrist, almost tender, but his tone grew sharper. Strange how your tiredness fades when he is near. Her breath caught. Who? You know who. His smile vanished. Don't play games with me. Lily froze, her pulse racing. He had seen. He knew. Kale leaned closer, his voice dropping into a growl only she could hear. That Omega forgets his place, and you, my little flower, must remember yours. You are mine, mine alone. If I even sense your loyalty wavering, his grip tightened, a warning in the pressure of his fingers. There will be consequences neither of you will survive. Her throat closed. She managed only a trembling nod, forcing her eyes downward so he wouldn't see the panic flickering there. Satisfied, Kyle released her and returned to the crowd, his laughter booming once again as though nothing had happened. But Lily stood in the shadows, trembling, her breath shallow. For the first time, Kale's jealousy wasn't hidden. It was sharp, visible, and dangerous. And though he had spoken of Sam with disdain, Lily realized the truth. Cale had begun to see what she herself had barely admitted. Her heart no longer beat for him, and that meant both she and Sam were now in grave danger. It was late, the village lanterns dimmed to embers, when Lily found herself walking the narrow path toward the well. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. She thought she was alone, until a quiet voice broke the silence. Lily. Her breath caught. Sam stepped from the shadows, carrying a small bundle of firewood. His presence was calm as always, yet something in his gaze tonight was different, more intent, more vulnerable. She hesitated. Sam, you shouldn't... I know, he said softly, setting the wood aside. But I couldn't let you walk alone. Her chest tightened. With Cale's warnings still ringing in her ears, she should have turned away. Yet the steadiness in Sam's eyes held her there. For a moment, they stood in silence, the night filled only with the whisper of crickets. Then Sam spoke again, his voice low, hesitant, as though weighing every word. People look at you, he said, and they see Cale's prize. They see silks, jewels, the Alpha's chosen. They think they know who you are. Lily's breath trembled. And you? What do you see? Sam's jaw tightened, his gaze flickering away, as if the truth itself was dangerous. But then he met her eyes again, and his words came with quiet certainty. I see the way your smile fades when no one's watching. I see how your hands tremble when he grips too tightly. I see. You, Lily. Not the Alpha's possession, not the flower he boasts about, just you. Her heart slammed against her ribs. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever dared. Sam, she whispered, her voice breaking. He shook his head quickly, stepping back as though afraid of his own confession. Forgive me, I shouldn't have said that, but I needed you to know. You're not invisible, not to me. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken longing. Lily's fingers curled at her side, aching to reach for him, yet bound by fear. Before she could reply, Sam picked up the bundle of wood again. His voice dropped to a near whisper. Be careful, Lily. Cale watches everything, but so do I. And then he was gone, fading into the shadows, leaving her trembling beneath the starlight, her heart torn between terror and the first fragile bloom of hope. The fire in the hearth had long since burned low, but Lily remained awake, curled on her bed, staring at the flickering shadows on the wall. Her thoughts should have been of Cale, the Alpha who draped her in silks, who claimed her before the village, who declared her his with every booming laugh. But tonight, her mind strayed elsewhere. She pictured Sam, not as the villagers saw him, the quiet Omega with plain clothes and unassuming ways. She imagined him as she had glimpsed in rare, unguarded moments, his steady gaze softening when he looked at her, the warmth in his voice when he said her name. She imagined a life beside him, simple and unremarkable to anyone else, but to her, a treasure. Days spent tending flowers instead of wearing jewels, evenings filled with laughter instead of commands, a hand that held hers gently, not possessively, a love that asked nothing but to exist. The image filled her chest with warmth and dread, because it was impossible. Kyle's shadow loomed over every thought, every breath. To even dream of another man, an Omega, no less, was to risk Kyle's fury. If he ever suspected? Lily pressed her face into her pillow, her heart racing. The fantasy was dangerous, forbidden, reckless. Yet she couldn't stop herself. It was the first dream in months that didn't feel like a cage. And though fear gnawed at her, she clung to the fragile hope it sparked inside her. For the first time, Lily allowed herself to whisper it into the darkness, barely audible even to her own ears. What if love could be soft? The words felt both terrifying and beautiful, like the first bud of a flower daring to bloom in the coldest winter. But as the thought took root in her heart, so did the danger. Because dreams of Sam were no longer just dreams. They were becoming desire. And Cale would never allow desire to grow anywhere but in the palm of his hand. The village square blazed with torches that night. Drums echoed, villagers gathered, their faces alight with anticipation. They thought it was a celebration of harvest, but Kyle had something else in store. Lily stood beside him, uneasy in yet another gown of crimson silk. She had not been told why she was summoned, only that she must look worthy of an alpha's pride. When the drums silenced, Cale raised his hand, his voice booming across the crowd. "Tonight, I make known what has long been truth," he declared, his arm wrapped tightly around Lily's waist, pulling her close until she felt the weight of his claim in every muscle. "This woman is mine, not just in word, but in bond." A murmur swept through the villagers, surprise, awe, delight. Lily's heart stopped. Bond. Cale reached into a box presented by his guards. Inside lay a silver chain, etched with the crest of his line. To most, it was a symbol of honor, an alpha's chosen mark. To Lily, it was a collar disguised as jewelry. He lifted it high. "Before all, I bind her to me. None will question, none will touch, none will doubt." The crowd erupted in cheers, but Lily's body went cold. She hadn't been asked. She hadn't been given a choice. This was no proposal. It was a declaration, a sealing of her fate. Her gaze darted desperately through the crowd, and found Sam. He stood at the edge of the square, his face shadowed, unreadable. But his fists were clenched at his sides, and even from a distance, Lily saw the storm in his eyes. Kyle fastened the chain around her throat, the metal biting cold against her skin. The villagers applauded, shouting blessings, but Lily's vision blurred with tears she dared not let fall. Cale leaned close, his whisper sharp as a blade. "Now no one will doubt you are mine, not even you." He kissed her forehead, and the crowd roared. But inside, Lily's soul screamed. The chain weighed heavier than iron. She wasn't just trapped anymore. She was bound. And as she glanced once more at Sam, the truth struck her like lightning. Her heart belonged elsewhere. And that made this binding not just unbearable. It made it dangerous. The silver chain glimmered around Lily's throat as she sat before her mirror, yet to her, it was no jewel. It was iron, unyielding and cold. Cale's mark, Cale's possession, Cale's claim before the world. She lifted trembling fingers to touch it, but each time she brushed the etched crest, her chest tightened as though it choked the very breath from her lungs. The room around her was lavish, silken curtains, polished wood, furs lining the floor. A queen's chamber by any measure. Yet to Lily, it had never felt more like a cell. Each gift Cale had once showered upon her now mocked her. The gowns were shackles, the jewels heavy stones dragging her spirit into darkness. For days she had smiled when told, spoken when prompted, sat by his side like a doll on display. The villagers praised her beauty, her fortune, her luck. But inside, she was hollow. At night, when the torches outside dimmed, she pressed her face into her pillow to smother her sobs. Tears came soundlessly, carrying the weight of a truth she dared not voice aloud. She no longer belonged to herself. Worse, she feared she was losing more than freedom. She was losing the fire within, the hope that once flickered in her chest. Each time she imagined escape, Cale's grip on her wrist, his cold warning, silenced her courage. Each time she thought of Sam, her heart twisted, not only with longing, but with guilt. For what future could she offer him, shackled as she was? She stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes, once bright with dreams, looked foreign, dimmed, resigned. "I'm a prisoner," she whispered, the words cracking in the stillness. "A prisoner in silks." Her voice broke, and with it, a piece of her spirit crumbled. The chain around her neck gleamed mockingly in the candlelight, as though it had won. But outside, beyond the locked door, someone had not given up. Sam's gaze still followed her in silence, his quiet strength lingering like a promise she could not yet see. Sam stood at the edge of the courtyard, half hidden in the shadows of the stone wall. From here, he could see everything without being seen himself. Lily sat near the fountain, Kale's silver chain glinting against her throat as she stared at the water's surface. Her posture was elegant, her face calm to any passing glance. But Sam saw what the others did not. Her stillness was not serenity. It was despair. Her eyes no longer carried light. And to Sam, that loss struck sharper than any blade. He clenched his fists at his sides. Every instinct screamed to go to her, to take her hand, to whisper that she wasn't alone. But Kale's guards watched from every corner, and Kale himself never strayed far. So Sam remained still, silent. But inside, something shifted. He thought of the nights he'd lain awake, knowing she cried in silence. He thought of the way her voice had trembled when she whispered her fears, how her smile never reached her eyes when Kale held her close. He thought of the dream she had dared to breathe into the air. What if love could be soft? A whisper that had changed everything. Sam's jaw tightened. He was an Omega, born to obey, to yield, to live unseen beneath the weight of alphas. But in this moment, none of that mattered. Because this wasn't about rank. This was about her. He bowed his head, the vow forming in the depths of his soul. I will not let her spirit break. Not while I breathe. Not while I live. The cost, he knew, could be everything. His freedom, his life, even the fragile trust she had given him. But the choice was no longer his to weigh. It had already been made in the silence of his heart. Sam lifted his gaze once more, watching Lily as the evening light softened around her. She looked so delicate, yet she carried chains no one else dared to see. No matter what Kyle claims, Sam thought, his chest burning with quiet fire, she will never be his. Not truly. Not while I stand. The vow was silent, unheard by anyone but the wind. But it was unbreakable. The moon hung low, casting silver light across the quiet village. Torches outside Kale's hall burned dim, guards pacing their rounds with heavy, predictable steps. Lily's heart thundered as she slipped through the narrow servants' passage, her cloak clutched tightly around her shoulders. Each creak of the wooden floor made her flinch, each shadow felt like Kale's hand about to seize her. She shouldn't be here. She knew the risk. If Kale discovered she had left her chamber at night, worse, that she sought another, his wrath would be merciless. But she couldn't endure the silence anymore. Couldn't bear the weight of the chain at her throat without the one voice that made her feel human. At the edge of the forest, beneath the cover of tall pines, he was waiting. Sam. He stood half hidden by the trees, his posture alert, eyes scanning the night as though he expected danger at every turn. When he saw her, his shoulders eased, though his jaw remained tight with worry. Lily? He whispered, stepping forward. His voice was equal parts relief and reprimand. You shouldn't. I had to, she interrupted, her voice trembling. Her hands shook as she clutched her cloak tighter, fighting the urge to fall into his arms. I can't breathe in there, Sam. I feel like I'm drowning. The raw desperation in her words silenced him. For a moment, all he could do was stare at her, his heart breaking at the sight of tears shimmering in her eyes. He reached out slowly, carefully, as though every movement might shatter her. His fingers brushed her trembling hand, steadying it. You're not drowning, he said softly. Not while I'm here. Her breath caught. The warmth of his touch seeped through her fear, through the chains around her spirit. For a fleeting moment, the world felt still. No guards, no alpha, no chain at her throat. Just her and him, standing too close beneath the shelter of the trees. Her lips parted, as though to confess everything. The fear, the longing, the dangerous dream of a life with him. But the words tangled in her throat, bound by terror. Instead, she whispered the only truth she could manage. "Don't leave me alone in this, Sam. Please." His hand tightened around hers, gentle but unyielding. "Never," he swore, his voice fierce despite its softness. The vow hung in the air like a spark, fragile yet powerful. But even as she clung to the comfort of his presence, a shadow of dread lingered. Because if Cale ever learned of this secret meeting, no vow, no matter how strong, could shield them from what would follow. The days that followed blurred into shadows and silences. Cale's presence grew heavier, his watchful eyes lingering on Lily longer than before, suspicion tightening around her like a noose. And yet, in stolen moments, she found Sam. Sometimes only a glance across the market square, where his gaze met hers through the crowd, steady and grounding. Sometimes only a brief exchange of words when she slipped from the hall under the guise of tending errands. Other times, on nights when courage outweighed fear, they met in the forest's quiet edges, where the world seemed to hush for them alone. It was never grand or reckless. No embraces, no declarations. Just small fragments of presence that stitched themselves into something unshakable. Lily would speak of her dreams in whispers, fragments of the girl she used to be before Cale's shadow consumed her. And Sam, he listened. Not with the judgment or dominance of an alpha, but with the rare kind of attention that made her feel seen. Once, when her voice cracked under the weight of despair, Sam knelt in the grass and picked up a wildflower, a simple thing, fragile and easily overlooked. He placed it gently in her palm. "Even in darkness, things still find a way to grow," he said quietly. Her fingers closed around the flower, her chest tightening with a swell of emotion so sharp it ached. She hadn't realized how much she needed someone to believe in her survival until that moment. It wasn't just kindness anymore. It wasn't just comfort. Each look, each word, each shared silence became a thread weaving them together. And Lily knew, dangerously, irrevocably, that her heart no longer beat for the alpha who had bound her. It belonged to Sam. She didn't dare speak it. He didn't dare claim it. But it was there, undeniable, alive between them in every quiet breath. And with every heartbeat, the bond grew stronger. A bond that, if discovered, would destroy them both. It was only a moment. Lily had paused by the well at dusk, the courtyard empty, but for Sam carrying a bundle of kindling. Their eyes met, and for once, she let herself smile, a fleeting, fragile thing that belonged only to him. "Thank you for the other night," she whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. Sam's lips curved, the smallest nod of acknowledgement. His gaze lingered, steady, warm, too warm. That was when the voice thundered behind them. "What is this?" The air cracked with Kyle's presence. He strode across the courtyard, his cloak billowing, his eyes sharp as a wolf scenting blood. Guards stiffened but did not move, watching with uneasy silence. Lily froze, the color draining from her face. Sam lowered the kindling slowly, his expression calm but unreadable. Cale's gaze snapped between them, his jaw tightening. Then he stepped close to Sam, towering over him, radiating power meant to crush. "You dare linger near what is mine?" Cale's voice was low, dangerous. Sam held his ground, but Lily saw the faint tremor in his hands, the quiet storm he contained. "Cale, please," Lily broke in quickly, her voice trembling. "He meant no harm." "Silence." Cale's hand shot out, gripping her arm with bruising force before shoving her aside. His fury was not for her tonight. It was for the Omega who had dared stand too near. He leaned close to Sam, his growl a promise of violence. "One word, one glance too many, and your life ends here, Omega. Do you understand?" The courtyard was silent, thick with tension. Sam's chest rose and fell, his jaw tight. He didn't bow, didn't plead. But his voice, quiet and even, carried enough weight to cut through the night. I understand. Cale smirked, satisfied at what he thought was submission. He shoved Sam back roughly, then turned to drag Lily toward the hall. But as Sam straightened, his eyes met Lily's one last time. And in that silent look, steady, unbroken, Lily saw the truth. He would not stop protecting her, not even under threat of death. And Cale's threat, meant to break them, had only deepened the bond he could not control. The hall was dim, lit only by the glow of the hearth. Cale paced before the fire, his shoulders rigid, his hands clenched. Lily sat on the edge of the carved oak chair, her fingers twisting in her lap, the silver chain at her throat glinting like a reminder of her silence. At last, she broke it. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't hurt him. Sam did nothing wrong." Cale's head snapped toward her, his eyes blazing. "Nothing wrong?" He was standing too close, breathing too close, looking at you like... His voice cut off, the growl low in his throat. Lily flinched, but she forced herself to continue, her voice cracking with urgency. "He is harmless. He serves. He obeys. He's not a threat to you." Cale's laugh was harsh, bitter. "Harmless? That Omega dared defy my presence by not groveling at my feet. Harmless men don't stare at what belongs to me." The word belong stung worse than a slap. "Cale, please," Lily pressed, her eyes burning with tears. "If you care for me at all, spare him. I'll do what you ask. I'll wear your chain. I'll stand by your side. But don't kill him. Don't make me watch you destroy someone so undeserving." For a moment, silence hung heavy in the room, broken only by the crackle of firewood. Kyle stepped closer, towering over her. He gripped her chin, forcing her gaze upward. His eyes glinted, dark and cold. "You plead for him," he said slowly, each word dripping with venom. "Not for yourself. For him." Lily's tears slipped free. She tried to shake her head, but his grip was iron. Cale leaned close, his whisper cruel against her ear. "Remember this, Lily. Every time you beg me for mercy, you remind me just how much power I have over you, over him, over everything you love." He released her suddenly, and she stumbled back, trembling. As Cale turned away, his shadow looming against the firelight, Lily's chest ached with a revelation she could no longer deny. This was not love. It had never been love. It was a cage, built by a man who thrived on chains and fear. And in the hollow left behind, only one truth remained. Her heart would rather shatter for Sam than beat in safety for Cale. The night was cool, the sky heavy with clouds that smothered the stars. Sam sat by the edge of the forest, his sleeve rolled up, binding a strip of cloth around his arm where Cale's shove had left more than just bruises. The pain was sharp, but it wasn't what weighed on him. It was the look in Lily's eyes, fear, desperation, pleading for his life as though he were already lost. He closed his eyes, his jaw tightening. For a moment, doubt gnawed at him. Was he selfish to linger near her? Was his presence a curse that chained her tighter to Cale's cruelty? Perhaps if he stayed away, Cale would loosen his grip, and Lily would suffer less. The thought nearly broke him. But then he remembered her trembling voice beneath the trees. "Don't leave me alone in this, Sam. Please." Those words anchored him, cutting through the storm of doubt. He looked down at his injured arm, flexing his hand despite the sting. Pain meant nothing. His place at the bottom of the pack meant nothing. His own safety meant nothing. What mattered was her. Even if he had to walk in shadows, even if he had to endure Cale's wrath, even if every step closer to Lily was a step closer to death, he would not abandon her. He lifted his gaze to the hall in the distance, where the torches burned and Lily's silhouette lingered in his mind. A vow formed again, unshaken by fear. I will endure. I will stand. As long as she needs me, I will not leave her to face this alone. The wind stirred through the trees, carrying the faint scent of lilacs. the same scent that always clung to her. Sam exhaled slowly, the ache in his chest settling into a quiet, stubborn strength. Cale could break his body, he could strip away his freedom, he could even take his life. But he would never break the bond that tied Sam's heart to hers. Never. The night stretched long and suffocating in Cale's hall. The fire burned low, casting shadows that seemed to crawl across the walls like restless spirits. Lily sat alone on the edge of her bed, the silver chain heavy against her throat. She pressed her hands to her face, trying to hold herself together, but the tears slipped through her fingers anyway. Her heart was a battlefield. Cale's voice still rang in her ears. "Every time you beg me for mercy, you remind me how much power I have." His grip, his threats, his cruel certainty that she belonged to him, it crushed the air from her lungs. Yet every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sam, standing tall even under Cale's wrath, bleeding but unbowed, his quiet vow echoing in her memory. "You're not alone. Not while I'm here." She loved him. God help her, she loved him. But what did love matter against Cale's power, against his guards, his authority, his rage? To love Sam openly was to sign his death warrant. To deny it, to keep pretending, was to watch her own spirit wither until nothing remained. Her sobs broke the silence, raw and desperate. "I can't," she whispered into her trembling hands. "I can't live like this, but I can't let him die for me either." The chain at her throat gleamed in the candlelight, mocking her torment. Loyalty chained her to Cale, fear chained her to silence, and yet love, dangerous, forbidden, undeniable, pulled her heart toward Sam with a force she could no longer resist. Her knees gave way, and she sank to the floor, clutching her chest as though she could hold the pieces of herself together. For the first time, Lily felt the full truth pressed down on her. No choice she made would spare her pain. Either way, she would lose something precious, her freedom, her heart, or the man who had become both. And in that breaking, she realized something even more terrifying. Soon, she would have to choose. The storm rolled in with fury, rain lashing against the windows, thunder rattling the very walls of the hall. Lightning split the sky, its flash casting Lily's chamber in stark, fleeting light. She couldn't sleep. The storm outside mirrored the tempest inside her chest. Her hands trembled, her heart aching with the weight of secrets too heavy to bear. When the guards shifted their patrol, she slipped from her chamber, her cloak clutched around her, the silver chain cold against her skin. The downpour soaked her instantly as she darted into the forest, guided only by the faint glow of the torch she knew Sam kept at the edge of the trees. And there he was, waiting, as though he had known she would come. Rain plastered his hair to his face, his clothes clinging to him, but his eyes lit with worry the moment he saw her. "Lily, you shouldn't be here. If Cale—" She cut him off with a trembling whisper. "I don't care anymore." The words hung between them, bold and fragile, carried on the roar of the storm. Sam froze, searching her face. Her tears blended with rain, but her voice shook with a truth she could no longer cage. "I can't keep pretending," she said, her hands curling into fists at her sides. "I wear his chain. I stand at his side, but inside, I'm breaking. Every day I'm breaking. And the only time I feel alive, the only time I feel like myself, is when I'm with you." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the anguish in her eyes, the raw emotion spilling from her. "I don't know what future we could possibly have," she whispered, her voice cracking. "But Sam, my heart—" She pressed her trembling hand to her chest. "My heart leans toward you. It always has. And no fear, no chain, can change that." Sam stood still, the storm raging around them, his breath caught as though her words had struck him like the thunder overhead. For a long moment, he said nothing, only stepped closer, his hand rising to brush the rain-soaked strands of hair from her face. His touch was gentle, reverent, as though she were something fragile and sacred. "You don't know what this means to me," he whispered at last, his voice thick with emotion. Her tears spilled freely now, but for the first time in months, they weren't only of sorrow, they were release. In the heart of the storm, her confession was both dangerous and liberating. And though fear still lingered like shadows, for one wild, impossible moment, Lily felt free. Chapter Draft. The Alpha's Wrath. The storm had not yet broken when Kale's men came pounding at his door, dripping wet, faces pale with unease. "My lord, Lily, she's gone." For a moment, silence. Then Kale rose from his chair, the goblet in his hand shattering as it hit the stone floor. "Gone?" His voice was low, dangerous, more frightening than a roar. "Where?" The guard stammered, but Kale didn't wait for answers. He knew. His instincts burned hot, his fury sharpening with clarity. There was only one place she would dare to run. Only one man reckless enough to take her from him. The Omega. The thought was gasoline to flame. His blood boiled, his jaw clenched until it ached. The storm outside seemed tame compared to the storm raging in his chest. By the time he reached the forest's edge, lightning split the sky, and there they were. Lily, rain-soaked, eyes wide with fear, standing too close to the man who should have known his place. And Sam, standing between her and the world, like a shield Kale had never given permission to exist. The sight snapped the last thread of Kale's control. His roar cracked through the storm, primal and terrifying. "Lily!" She flinched, her heart lurching into her throat. Sam stepped forward instinctively, his stance protective, steady, even as Kale's eyes burned with murder. "How dare you?" Kale's voice was thunder itself, his eyes locked on Lily, betrayal cutting deeper than any blade. "I gave you everything, my name, my protection, my claim, and you repay me with this." He turned his fury on Sam, every word dripping with venom. "And you, filthy Omega, did you think you could steal what is mine? Did you think I would not see through your pathetic lies?" The rain hammered down, but the true storm was in Kale's eyes. His chest heaved, his hands clenched, every inch of him trembling with a rage so violent it threatened to tear the night apart. Lily's breath hitched, torn between terror and defiance. For the first time, she saw the Alpha not as a savior or protector, but as the cage he truly was. And in his fury, she realized something chilling. If she stayed, Kale would destroy Sam to keep her. If she ran, Kale would destroy everything to bring her back. Either way, the storm had only just begun. The storm raged overhead, lightning tearing open the sky as though the heavens themselves bore witness. Kale advanced, each step radiating raw authority, his presence suffocating, his rage a living thing. "Step aside, Omega," he snarled, voice sharp as steel. "She is mine." Sam did not move. His feet sank into the mud, shoulders squared, eyes steady. He was drenched from rain, battered from Kale's earlier threats, but unyielding. His silence spoke louder than 1,000 roars. That silence enraged Kale more than any insult. He lunged, fists clenched, dominance crackling in the air like fire. His strength was terrifying, each strike carrying the weight of his alpha bloodline. Sam met him, not with equal force, but with a steadiness that rooted him like stone. He dodged when he could, absorbed blows when he couldn't, but his focus never shifted. His body shielded Lily, his every breath declaring what he didn't say out loud. "You will not touch her." "Fight me!" Kyle roared, fury boiling over as his fist connected with Sam's jaw. Blood sprayed against the rain, yet Sam stayed standing. Lily cried out, rushing forward, but Sam lifted a trembling hand, holding her back. His gaze never wavered from Kale. His voice, low and even, cut through the storm. "She is not a prize to be owned, Kale. She is a woman, a heart, a soul, and you're breaking her." For the first time, Kale faltered. His eyes flickered, wild with rage but touched by something else, a dangerous crack in his certainty. But the moment passed. With a snarl, Kale shoved forward, his power slamming against Sam's restraint. Mud splashed, trees trembled, thunder crashed. Alpha dominance versus Omega resilience, raw power versus quiet strength. Lily's heart pounded as she watched, her body trembling, torn between terror and awe. Sam was bloodied, staggering, yet still he stood. Still he blocked Kale's path, still he refused to bow. And in that storm-lit moment, Lily realized the truth. Kale was stronger, but Sam was unbreakable. The clash shook the forest. Kale's roar split the night as his fist crashed into Sam's ribs, the crack of impact nearly lost in the thunder. Sam staggered, blood at his lip, but he held his ground, bracing himself like a wall that refused to fall. Lily's scream tore through the storm. "Stop!" Neither man listened. Kale lunged again, a beast of fury, while Sam endured, his body breaking but his will unshaken. Every strike was a promise of destruction, every block a silent vow of protection. And Lily, trapped between them, felt her heart splitting in two. The rain blinded her, the mud pulled at her feet, but she surged forward anyway, tears mixing with the storm. She couldn't watch Sam be destroyed for her. She couldn't watch Kale fall deeper into the monster he was becoming. With a sob, she threw herself between them. Kale's fist froze inches from her face. Sam's hand, half raised to block, dropped to his side. Both men froze, their breaths ragged, the storm raging around the stillness she had created. Her chest heaved, her eyes wide, every nerve in her body trembling with terror. "Please," she cried, voice raw, desperate. "No more. You'll kill each other. And for what? For me?" She turned to Kale first, her voice breaking. "I am not your possession, Kale, not your prize, not your claim. I'm a person. And if you love me, if you ever loved me, you'll stop treating me like something to be fought over." Then she faced Sam, her eyes glistening with sorrow. "And you can't keep throwing yourself into his rage just to shield me. I can't bear it. I can't lose you." The words hung in the rain-heavy air, fragile, trembling, dangerous. Kale's chest heaved, his fist still curled, fury burning hot, but in his eyes was something else now, something wounded. Betrayal. Sam, bloodied and swaying, looked at her with quiet reverence, as though even her broken plea was worth more than his life. And Lily, drenched, sobbing, trembling, realized she had become the storm's center. Both men could break her world apart, but only she could decide how it would end. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Only the rain, only the thunder rolling far above. Then Kale's hand shot out, seizing Lily's wrist in an iron grip. She gasped, stumbling against him, her breath shattering with panic. "You think you can stand between us?" His voice was low, vibrating with barely contained fury. His wet hair clung to his face, his eyes gleaming with a wild, possessive fire. "You are mine, Lily. Mine to protect, mine to love, mine to claim, and no Omega—" His gaze cut like a blade toward Sam. "Will take you from me." "Kale, stop. Please." Her voice cracked, her body twisting against his hold, but his grip only tightened. She saw it then. Not love, not devotion, but obsession. A desperate hunger to control, to own. "You begged me once to keep you safe," he hissed, dragging her closer. "And I will, even from yourself." His other hand reached for the chain at her throat, fingers brushing the silver as though ready to mark her forever. Lily's heart plummeted. The chain that had once felt like protection now burned against her skin, a collar instead of a promise. Her tears spilled, but her voice rose, trembling with fury. "This isn't love, Kyle. This is prison." For the first time, Kyle faltered, but only for a heartbeat. Then his expression hardened. "You'll understand one day. You belong to me. Sam's voice broke through the storm, hoarse but firm. No, she doesn't. Kyle snarled, his grip tightening, pulling Lily back against him. She struggled, terror surging through her veins, her desperate eyes meeting Sam's. In that instant, Lily's soul fractured. Kyle had revealed the truth she had been afraid to name. The man she once thought could protect her had become her greatest danger. The alpha she trusted had betrayed her. Kyle's grip on Lily tightened, the chain at her throat gleaming like a cruel crown. She thrashed against him, but his strength was unyielding, his rage boiling hotter with every heartbeat. Then, through the sheets of rain, Sam moved. Blood streaked his jaw, his ribs ached with every breath, yet his eyes blazed with something unshakable. He took one step, then another, his body swaying, but his resolve solid as stone. Let her go, Kyle. The words were steady, quiet, yet they cut through the storm like thunder. Kyle bared his teeth. You dare command me? You are nothing, an omega, weak, forgotten. But Sam did not flinch. He stood tall, his silhouette framed by lightning, his presence calm and immovable, even against Kyle's wrath. I'm weak, maybe, Sam said, his voice hoarse but unyielding. But I will never let you hurt her. If you want to break someone, break me. But you will not chain her soul. Lily's heart stuttered. Tears blurred her vision as she reached a trembling hand toward him. Sam, Kyle snarled, yanking her closer as though to stake his claim. You'd die for her? You'd give everything? For this woman who belongs to me? Sam's answer was simple, raw, and absolute. Yes. The storm seemed to pause around the word. Even the thunder waited. Lily's breath caught. The world spun in chaos, yet in that moment, Sam's vow wrapped around her like a lifeline. He wasn't fighting for dominance. He wasn't fighting for possession. He was fighting for her freedom, her heart, her right to choose. Kale roared, fury erupting, but Sam stepped forward again, bloodied, broken, unbowed. His body placed itself fully between Lily and the Alpha's wrath. He had nothing but his battered strength, yet in that moment, he became everything. Her shield, her choice, her hope. The forest trembled with Kale's fury, thunder rolling as if the heavens themselves raged with him. His grip on the chain at Lily's throat tightened, yanking her back, but she no longer cried or begged. Something inside her had broken. No, not broken. Awakened. She looked at Sam. Bloodied, bruised, barely able to stand, yet standing for her, always for her. His quiet vow echoed in her soul. You're not alone. Not while I'm here. Then she looked at Kale, his eyes wild, his hands cruel, his voice filled with a love twisted into chains, a man who swore to protect her, but instead caged her. Her heart hammered as the truth crystallized. She had been living in fear, fear of Kale's wrath, fear of losing Sam, fear of making the wrong choice, but love was stronger than fear. Her voice rose, breaking through the storm. Enough! Kale froze, startled by the strength in her cry. Her hand shot up, ripping the silver chain from her throat. The link snapped with a sharp, ringing crack, scattering into the mud at their feet. The mark of her captivity lay broken. I am not yours, Kale, she said, her voice trembling but fierce. Not your possession, not your prize, not your chain to hold. She stepped closer to Sam, slipping beneath his battered arm, steadying him though her own body trembled. If I belong anywhere, it's by my choice, and I choose him. Lightning split the sky, bathing them in silver light as she pressed herself against Sam's side. Kale's face twisted, fury and disbelief colliding in his eyes. You would defy me? For him? Her answer was steady, clear, unstoppable. I will no longer live in fear. I choose love. I choose freedom. I choose Sam. The storm seemed to bow around her words. For the first time, Kyle, the alpha who commanded rooms with a glance, who broke men with his power, stood stunned into silence. And Lily, trembling yet unshaken, realized something she had never dared believe. She wasn't just the girl caught between them. She was the choice that could break them both. The storm reached its crescendo, thunder shaking the earth as Cale's face twisted with disbelief and rage. Lily's defiance echoed in his mind, the sight of her standing beside Sam burning deeper than any wound. "You would shame me for him?" His voice broke, raw with fury. "After everything I've given you, after everything I am?" He lunged, his hand raised to strike, to reclaim, to crush. But this time, Lily didn't flinch. Sam moved. Though battered and bloodied, he caught Cale's arm mid-swing. His body shook with the effort, his ribs screaming in pain, but he held firm. Lightning flashed, and for the first time, the great Alpha looked shaken. Sam's voice, low and ragged, cut through the storm. "Strength doesn't make you worthy, Kyle, and fear doesn't make you loved." With one final surge, Sam twisted, throwing Kyle off balance. The mighty Alpha stumbled into the mud, his chain of dominance broken as surely as the one Lily had torn from her throat. Gasps rose from the shadows, Cale's own men, watching from the edge of the clearing. They had seen him bleed. They had seen him fall. The Alpha who once inspired fear now looked small, trembling, his authority slipping like water through his fingers. "No!" Cale roared, clawing at the ground, but no one came to his side. His power, once absolute, had cracked. Lily stood tall, Sam's hand in hers, her voice steady as she faced him. "You were never my protector, Cale. Only my cage. And now you are nothing to me." The words landed like a final strike. The storm began to ease, as though the skies themselves acknowledged the shift. Cale, chest heaving, eyes wild, realized what he had lost. Not just Lily, not just his claim, but the respect that made him Alpha. One by one, his men turned away, leaving him kneeling in the mud, stripped of everything but his pride, and even that lay shattered at his feet. Defeated. Exiled not by decree, but by truth. The Alpha was no more. The storm had passed. The forest dripped with the hush of rain's aftermath, leaves heavy with water, the ground soft beneath their feet. The air, once suffocating with rage and fear, now carried only the quiet song of freedom. Lily stood still, her chest heaving, her hand clutching Sam's as though it were the only thing anchoring her to the earth. Cale was gone, his shadow broken, his presence nothing more than a ghost retreating into the darkness. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was no chain at her throat, no weight pressing down on her heart, only choice, only love. Sam swayed, bloodied and weary, but when Lily turned to him, his eyes were steady, soft, warm, unyielding in their devotion. "You're safe now," he whispered, though his voice trembled with exhaustion. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time, they weren't born of fear. She reached up, brushing the wet strands of hair from his face, her fingertips lingering against his bruised skin. "No, Sam," she said softly, her voice breaking into a smile. "We're safe now." His breath caught, as though her words had healed something deeper than any wound. Slowly, almost reverently, his hands rose to her face, cupping her cheeks as if she were something fragile and sacred. And then, at last, she closed the distance. Their lips met, gentle at first, trembling with everything they had endured. But as the kiss deepened, all the fear, all the pain, all the silent longing melted away, leaving only love. Love that was no longer forbidden. Love that was no longer shadowed by chains or fear. When they finally pulled apart, Lily leaned her forehead against his, her smile trembling through tears. "I was never meant to be caged," she whispered. "And you set me free." Sam held her close, his arms wrapping around her, strong despite his wounds. "No, Lily," he murmured against her hair. You freed yourself. I only stood by you." The forest was quiet, the storm's fury replaced by the hush of new beginnings. And in that silence, wrapped in Sam's embrace, Lily finally felt it. Peace. Real, unshakable peace. Love free of shadows. The days that followed were quiet. Not empty, not haunted, but gently quiet. The kind of silence that comes after a storm, when the earth breathes again and the sun warms the soil. Lily and Sam moved into the small cottage at the forest's edge, a place far from the echoes of Cale's Hall. The air smelled of pine and wildflowers, the mornings filled with birdsong instead of shouted commands. For the first time, Lily woke without chains. No silver at her throat, no fear in her chest. Only the soft rhythm of Sam's breathing beside her, his arm draped loosely around her waist, steady and sure. Life was simple, but it was theirs. They cooked meals together, their laughter echoing in the small wooden room. Sam tended the garden while Lily painted wildflowers on the walls, their colors bright and defiant against the shadows of the past. Some evenings they walked along the river, their fingers intertwined, the silence between them as comforting as any words. There were scars, of course. Sam's ribs still ached when he lifted too much. Lily still startled at sudden noises. But healing was not meant to erase the past. It was meant to grow around it, to soften the sharp edges with love and patience. And in that healing, they found each other again and again. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the horizon, Lily leaned against the doorway of their cottage, watching Sam mend a fence post. He looked up, sweat glistening, his smile crooked and warm. Her heart swelled with something she had once thought impossible. Peace. "Sam," she called softly. He looked up, brows raised. She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "Thank you, for never giving up on me." He set his tools aside, walking to her with that quiet, steady presence that had always been his strength. He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away her tears. "Lily," he whispered, "you were never mine to save. You were always strong enough to save yourself. I only walked with you until you saw it." She pressed her forehead to his, her arms circling his waist. The setting sun bathed them in light, the shadows of the past fading behind them. And in that moment, Lily knew. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were living. Gentle, real, healing. Together. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. Lily stood on the porch of their cottage, the cool morning breeze tugging gently at her hair. Sam was behind her, tending the garden, his movements steady, calm, a quiet rhythm of life and care. She took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face, the freedom in every heartbeat. Her thoughts drifted back to the storm, the forest, Cale's rage, and the nights of fear that had once bound her spirit. And she realized how far she had come, not just from danger, but from the idea that love could ever mean possession. Love, she finally understood, was not about chains. It was not about power, dominance, or control. True love lived in trust, in freedom, in the quiet courage to let someone choose you every day. She glanced at Sam. He looked up and smiled, a small, knowing curve of lips. In that glance, she saw the truth of their journey. His love had never demanded her obedience. It had only honored her courage. "I am free," she whispered, softly, more to herself than anyone else. "And I choose love, not fear. I choose trust, not chains." The wind carried her words, gentle and sure, across the land. And in that simple, unwavering declaration, Lily knew the final truth. Love is not power. Love is not control. Love is freedom. And when your heart is free, it can love fully, without shadows, without fear, and without compromise. She turned toward Sam, and together they stepped into the new day. Hearts aligned, souls unbroken, and love unchained.